Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we are going to be specifically talking about Andrew Yang and the recession alert. All right, now the recession alert's really big news, and I'm also going to be talking specifically about what actions Andrew Yang should take based on this new news. How should he change his angle of skirmish for the 2020 U.S. presidential primary candidate race? All right, let's get into it. All right, did I say recession alert? Yes, I did. Let's talk about it. This is big news, all right? So just this week, there were two things that happened in the financial markets that scared the living bejesus out of the markets themselves, out of the American market and out of the international market, okay? And that was recession alerts in America. People going, is there going to be a recession in America? All right, two events happened that triggered this recession alert concern. All right, from the markets specifically, okay? One, 800-point drop on the Dow on Wednesday, okay? Now, it's Friday, So that's like a couple days ago, 800-point drop. That's significant, right? That is a major problem, right? And so it did. It scared the market. It scared the American market. It scared the international market, right? What else? Yield curve inversion. What the heck is yield curve inversion? All right. So here's the deal. Yield curve inversion has to do with the value of government bonds, right? So basically, short-term government bonds are supposed to be more valuable than long-term government bonds. But it flipped. It inverted this week, right? And short-term government bonds were more valuable than long-term government bonds, right? And I was like, whoa, that's not good, right? Like, so that is not good, right? So that inversion really scared the market, right? All right. Two events, right? Two incidents, right? 800-point drop in the Dow, yield curve inversion happening, markets gets frightened, all right? So what should Andrew Yang do now, right? So one, this is all reported by the media, right? So you got like, Washington Post and like a whole bunch of other major news outlets, MSNBC, all reporting this, right? So what should Andrew Yang do about this, right? Should he be concerned, right? Actually, is this an opportunity? Should he recognize this as an opportunity? Because the reality is, Donald Trump, he feeds the beast, right? What is the constituency of an American president? Their own voters, their own base, right? Their financial backers, right? That's part of their constituency. And the people who didn't vote for him. They have obligations to them, too, because, they're all Americans. And the American president represents the American people, right? So you got to feed that beast, right? Well, Donald Trump is really good at feeding the beast, right? Everybody's got a job, and because everybody's working, that means it's harder for employers to find employees, and that means everybody's making a little more, right? So very, very few people are out of work. Lots of money for everybody who's working, right? That is feeding the beast. That's what Donald Trump does. So if there's a recession, right, and there's financial trouble, Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble. Because I'll tell you right now, Donald Trump is not a good president especially if the economy is not firing on all cylinders. He's got problems. I mean, major problems. And it would absolutely help the Democrats to move forward if there is a recession. Recession is awesome for the Democrats, terrible for the Republicans right now in the 2020 election, right? Like, I'll tell you right now, Donald Trump cannot afford to be looking at a recession, right? Because he's not a super great president on anything but economy. But on economy, man, he's Ronald Reagan good, right? He really is, right? That's really non-contestable, right? He's crushing it economically. All right. So, does Andrew Yang go, ooh, I see an opportunity? No, right? Here's why. We ain't going into a recession. I'm going to break it down for you, right? It has to do with millennials, steel tariffs, and the lack of kids. So let's break it down. We are absolutely not going into a recession. So this is the J. Scott Garibay analysis. And what is the J. Scott Garibay analysis? Is reading about 4 or 5 articles on the subject, listening to 2 or 3 podcasts on the subject, and throw in some Joe Rogan for spice, right? So that's my process, right? And also, actually, tell the truth, there's a little more in there, right? So I do, of course, I follow social media as well. And then in addition to that, I know several business owners. I know them personally. I talk to them directly, right? So I do not own my own business. I'm an employee, pretty high level employee actually. Very, very blessed. Been very blessed to do well in my industry. But I know some people who own their own businesses, and like not small ones, like kind of large ones, right? Actually, medium. That's a better way to say it, right? So, and I talk to these people. I talk to them every week, right? And I'll ask them how things are going. I have an idea of how things are on the East Coast and on the West Coast and in the South. I don't know a whole lot about the Heartland, and I certainly don't know nothing about Canada. All right, okay. So let's put it through. So here's the issue, right? Let's talk about millennials. All right, boomers are dying and retiring. That's happening, right? Now, just so you're aware, I remember very carefully about 15 years ago, all over where I was at, where I live in the Philadelphia area, there's funeral homes popped up like popcorn, right? And the reason why was everybody's like, ooh, let's get that money. The boomers are going to die, right? And then also, just so you're aware, my wife's family's from the Indiana area, from Louisville, Kentucky area, right? In Indiana as well in there. And so, we go out there a few times a year, and same thing, just funeral homes everywhere. So everybody thought the boomers were going to die. Boomers didn't die. They lived a lot longer than anybody expected, right? So you got that situation where all that's happening, right? And it was very interesting. But now the boomers legit are dying, right? They are dying in larger and larger numbers, and they're retiring like crazy, right? Well, no problem. We're bringing those millennials to replace these dying boomers, right? Well, it ain't working. What every employer is finding out is it takes 2 millennials to replace 1 boomer, right? Now, if you're expecting me to give you some blah blah story about how the millennials stink, you ain't gonna get it from J. Scott Garibay. Millennial people are awesome. They're very capable, super smart. I love the millennials. The millennials are a great generation, and every problem that they own is my problem, is my generation's responsibility, right? I'm Generation X, right? And I have kids who are millennials, and I have Gen Z kids, right? And every single thing that is wrong with with my millennial kids and my Gen Z kids, that's all my fault, none of theirs, right? And that's the same thing with all millennials, right? Millennials are awesome. So why does it take 2 millennials to replace a boomer? Well, here you go. Boomers had extremely unhealthy relationship with their employers, and millennials have a very healthy relationship with their employers, all right? So let's talk about boomers, right? Boomers learned how to work from the silent generation. The silent generation worked till their hands bled, right? The boomers worked until their hands ached and they were chafed and red, right? Like, the boomers worked hard, right? And another thing that happened with the boomers is they had, like, work-life balance. They didn't know what the heck that was. They absolutely sacrificed time, energy, love, took that from their family and gave it to their employers, right? And that drove the engine of success for America for quite a while, right? Now, the millennials look at that and they're like, that don't look healthy and that doesn't look enjoyable at all, right? And so boomers are like work-life balance, right? And they also are, so they have work-life balance, right? They go home, like they work an 8-hour day, maybe they work a 9-hour day, and then they go home, right? And when they go home, they, play video games, hang out with their friends, and, do things that are healthy, right? Instead of logging back on and doing a bunch of more work, or thinking about work, or, so they have a much more healthy relationship as far as work-life balance, right? The other issue is millennials really, they are employed, they care about cause when it comes to employment, right? They want to rescue puppies, and they want to help dolphins, and they want to set up food shelters, right? And so a lot of millennials are going into environmentalism work, they're going into activism, they're going into nonprofits, a lot of stuff, right? And it's really quite interesting. So what do you do with that, right? Well, what you got to realize is there's a lot of intellectual talent that is working at, a third or even half of what they could be making in non-cause jobs, right? And so that's another reason why millennials, basically, the regular jobs out there, not rescuing puppies or dolphins or, reshaping the earth with wind turbines to give energy, right? The regular, let's drive the engine of profit for America jobs, millennials are interested in them at a much lower rate, right? All right. So that means, like, if you're a regular business, if you're like a let's turn the engine, the engine of profit in America kind of business, you're going to have a very hard time. You have to hire 2 millennials to cover 1 boomer, right? Because boomers did not have a healthy relationship to work, and millennials have a very healthy relationship to work, right? So it's 2 for 1, right? That means this unemployment thing, it ain't going away, right? I strongly believe this. Like, we are not in a situation where we're going to have an excess of workers, not anytime soon, because those boomers are dying like crazy, right? And they're retiring like crazy, all right? So that's one issue. Here's another one, right? Here's another reason why we are not going. Now, that one that I just talked about, that's J. Scott Garibay observation and watching trends and patterns in America, okay? Here's the next one. This one is not from me. This is from the incredibly liberal, incredibly smart team at Slate Money. Slate Money, dyed-in-the-wool liberals, right? Super, super liberal. So, like, what I'm about to say is going to sound conservative, but this is coming straight out of the mouths of 3 dyed-in-the-wool liberals, right? Love Slate Money. Really good podcast if you get a chance to check it out. All right, and they explained steel tariffs, right? And you're hearing all this nonsense that Americans are paying for steel tariffs. That is a bunch of noise, right? Here's the truth, right? They dropped this science on Slate Money, talked about this for like a half an hour, and just broke it down. And I'm going to break it down for you right now. All right, here's what happened with steel tariffs. President Trump rattles the cage of the American market and the international market, saying steel tariffs on South America, steel tariffs on China, steel tariffs on anybody. You want to ship steel to America, tariffs on you. Boom, right? Now, Donald Trump's being disruptive, right? So we should get punished for that as America, right? We didn't get punished. We got massively rewarded for it. Here's how it works. All right. So basically, again, this is straight from the Slate Money people. They said what happened was people were shocked and frightened. The American market was shocked and frightened. The international market was shocked and frightened, right? So what happened? When the markets are shocked and frightened, they retreat to safety. What is safety? The U.S. dollar, right? The U.S. dollar is super, super safe, right? In fact, you can't find a safer currency, right? Now, and so basically, people bought the U.S. dollar like crazy to get it into their own reserves. All these countries did it, right? And the Chinese yuan went down in value, right? So, Donald Trump comes up, shakes the cage, gets everybody frightened. America gets a huge reward for it because the U.S. dollar goes up in value, right? You ain't hearing this from the media, right? Yeah, and frankly, I don't consider Slate Money, like it's a podcast, like 4 people listen to it, right? So, by the way, podcasts, if you're not listening to them, almost nobody listens to podcasts. Smartest people in the world listen to podcasts, right? That's all that is, right? All right. So here's the thing. Now, why is the U.S. dollar so safe, right? We're going to jet back onto Scott Garibay world, right? Here's why the U.S. dollar is so rock solid, right? It's because every other country in the world is so far behind us, right? Europe, breaking in half, Brexit. That's a huge problem, right? Canada, they got a reserve of maple syrup. That's all they got, right? South America, right? South America, they are major producers. I work in information technology. They are coming up in IT. South America, they are really innovative, hard-working people, but they got a major problem at the continental level, right? In South America, they got one product that they have a history with, and a whole bunch of countries are down there saying, hey, this really profitable product, should we continue to make this? And it causes ripples of huge problems through their legal systems, for their people. It's big. It is a very, very big problem. All right, Russia, they're still picking up their pieces from the whole, Soviet Union falling apart, not even 20, 30 years ago, right? When you change the world through communism and it don't work out, you're still going to be paying for that 30 years later. They are, right? Russia is not a threat in any way. They really aren't, right? India, just like South America, super hard workers, super innovative, super intelligent, right? But they have a problem at the governmental level. They have a ripple problem. They have one problem that has been plaguing them in various levels of their government. It keeps happening with leader after leader after leader. Sometimes they'll get somebody who doesn't have the ripple problem, but it is a problem, right? There's this one distinct problem that they can't seem to shake out from their government, and it causes major issues, right? And it keeps them behind America, right? So, like, there are these, it's just across the earth, right? And China's, again, no threat, right? And the reason why China is not a threat is they have super intelligent, super hardworking, super innovative people, just like India and just like South America, but they are all sad because they don't have freedom, they don't have personal safety, and they don't have rule of law, right? So it is very hard to focus and stay heads down and actually lead your life if you don't even have basic freedoms. If you can't decide who you're going to worship, if you can't decide, if you can't pick up a newspaper and maybe there's a little bit of truth in it, if you can't, choose. They just got the right to choose how many kids they have. Freedom is, if you don't have freedom, it's a major problem. And it's a serious problem. So none of these countries are a major threat, right? So the U.S. dollar remains the only safe currency in the world, and it will remain the only safe currency in the world, and it's going to keep us out of recession. Last of the three reasons, okay? No kids. People aren't having kids anymore, right? So if you're worried, so what drives a recession, right? People can't get jobs, and the jobs that they're getting don't pay much, right? Well, the reality is, we already discussed, millennials are 2-for-1 boomer hires, right? That's going to keep employment, that's going to keep jobs available in America, right? It gets even worse, right? So, we've discussed this before, but it has massively reshaped society. Okay, silent generation, married kids, boomer generation, married kids divorced, Generation X, no marriage, kids, millennials, no marriage, no kids. Marriage and children is seen as a luxury for only the wealthiest people in America now, right? And by and large, at the macro level, millennials are signing off of the whole kid thing, which means there's less people, right? This is a huge problem for humanity, but it's going to solve a whole bunch of short-term problems, right? And it almost guarantees no recession, right? Like, you have tons and tons of people dying right now. You have one of the largest generations in history in America, the boomers. I think they are the largest generation in history for America. And they had tons and tons of kids. They're all dying like crazy. And the generation that's replacing them is not having kids, right? So there you go, right? Millennials are 2-for-1 replacement for boomers. Steel tariffs, no matter what the media says, keeps the U.S. dollar super valuable and super strong. And then last, millennials are not having any kids, which guarantees that the demand for skilled workers remains high, and you're going to have to pay them. You're going to have to put in kombucha taps and get yoga classes for them and the whole nine, man. Like, it's a thing. Just ask WeWork, right? So all of this means no recession, all right? So how does Andrew Yang leverage this, right? Well, here's the kicker, right? Andrew Yang continues to distinguish himself. He's doing such a great job, and this is my advice for him to continue to distinguish himself from the pack. Andrew Yang is truly unique. All right, the rest of the pack is going to pile on, and they're going to go, hey, Wall Street Journal said there's going to be a recession, or hinted that there were clues there would be a recession, right? That means Trump's bad, and he isn't delivering for you economically. Even when people are going, hey, I got a job, and and I can go get another one anytime I want, and it's paying pretty well, right? So rather than try to say that Donald Trump has not delivered economic value for Americans, which he 100% has, right? He can acknowledge, say, listen, Donald Trump is the real deal when it comes to the economy, right? You've done great under him, and he has supplied money, right? We get that, right? So you have work and you have money in your pocket. And he has been very helpful to the fossil fuel industry, which means gas is super cheap, which means that everything in America is super cheap because everything's shipped, right? So your dollar is going farther. I acknowledge everything that Donald Trump had. I think Andrew Yang is saying this, should say this. I acknowledge everything Donald Trump has done economically. Here's the problem, right? Donald Trump is the second president in a new tradition of a president's, and the cost of what Donald Trump is delivering to you is too high, right? Now, Donald Trump is the second in a new tradition in America, which is Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. They're the same dude, right? Both these guys took behavior that did not belong anywhere near a U.S. presidential president and attached that behavior to the U.S. presidency. We look back now and we see clear as day that Bill Clinton was saying to America, character and moral aspiration, like being desirous of doing good and being shameful when you do bad, is no longer attached to the U.S. presidency. It is gone, right? I'm going to take all kind of behavior that does not belong anywhere near the U.S. presidential role, and I'm going to bolt it on, right, with like a power drill, right? That was Bill Clinton. Now Trump's like, hold my beer. I'll show you how you get rid of character and moral aspiration and completely detach that from the presidency, right? So Andrew Yang has to point out that Donald Trump is of the tradition of Bill Clinton, and Andrew Yang is the only person who will fully reattach character and moral aspiration to the presidency. And on top of that, you get UBI, right? He's the only candidate that can reattach, right, character and moral aspiration to the presidency and deliver UBI. Only candidate who can do it, right? Right. So that's the real kicker, and that's how he differentiates himself. I really think the path to beating Trump is not trying to deny what he has accomplished. It is declaring that the cost of those accomplishments is not a good value, and that the U.S. president, the position of U.S. president, must be restored to nobility, must be restored to having character and moral aspiration fully attached to it. And a lot of damage has been done by the red and the blue, right? Fully acknowledging the damage that both parties have done to this position, to the U.S. presidential position, and saying we cannot have a continuation of this tradition. We need to fix this, and Andrew Yang is the guy to do it. All that is my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you think? How do you think that Andrew Yang should respond to these recession alerts? I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.